Welcome back to Dynamically Typed. Here's another unboxing. And I just couldn't pass this one up at the price I paid for it. And it starts with this. Let's keep going here. That is bigger than I thought it was going to be. I don't know when this video would air, but in the real world timeline, I'm disassembling a Royal 5 parts machine, and it's all over the table there. Starting to peek out. And there it is. It's a Toshiba 1400 FL. Looks like the bail roller got bent, but the rest of this looks acceptable, and I should be able to bend that bail roller back. I'll have to learn everything about this. No, almost nothing. It feels like things are moving. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's exciting. Some kind of linkage that's not linking right under there. Is to be assumed. That can't be the original mechanism there, but already I'm pretty happy. It is bigger than I expected it to be. Yet another project for another time. Well, as we're waiting for the Royal parts to soak in the evaporust, we're taking a little break from the Great Royal Swapperoo, and we're looking at the Toshiba 1400 FL. And the very first thing I notice is these feet are destroyed. So everything apart from the functionality of the typewriter is secondary. We really need to figure out how to make this thing not scratch up everything it's on. And the first thing I see is it's just these big screws. So I reach over to the closest thing at hand, which is an old Royal. And I suspect if I pull this off of here, and these are the longest screws ever, I suspect I can just take this, drop it in there. It might need a slightly bigger washer, but that's going to do the trick for now. Royal giveth again. Let's go find some slightly bigger washers. Alright, I found something here. Fits in just nicely. And let's see how these Royal feet end up looking on this Toshiba typewriter. I mean, they're 100 years old themselves, so they're worn out. But not as worn out as this thing is. Alright, 4 more of those. Again, these are not going to outlive the machine. They'll get me through the next little while until I can find something else that was suitable. It also tells me feet for the Royal 5 are suitable if I ever wanted to just order those. Presumably somebody has those for me. They all come out, which is more than I can say of that Royal 5. One of those 4 feet really took some doing to come out. I had to have the biggest of my Chapman bits and the ratchet arm to get enough leverage to pull it out. Alright, for now, that will do. Look at these. This is impressively bad. Those go in the garbage. I'll keep the washers. do a little vacuum in here and see what we got. Well, working on the Toshiba, what I've basically done is oiled this, which was never a real problem. More importantly, oiled the carriage bearings, which, you know, it's going to need a while to soak in, but it's starting to move. And then I oiled the mechanism under here to within an inch of its life, and now at least this thing does come up. It's still needing enough lubrication that it's not actually actuating hard enough to hit it. But it does the things in order now, which is nice. I still can't get this carriage to move. So something in the lateral index is frozen. But the fact that you can see the carriage moves, honestly, I think this is going to work. I don't know exactly how or exactly what's going to make it work, but I think we're going to get this to the point where it will at least do something. The next problem might be there's an ink pad in there. Put it in there. I don't know how you access it to change it. And it is dry. But unlike a Blickensderfer that really seems to care exactly where it is, this thing actuates by just sort of being huge. Point being, I might be able to find like a ink roller for a calculator or something that might go in there and work. And that would be useful. Obviously the platen is destroyed. However, this is a huge platen. I wonder if JJ Short's going to look at that and go, that's double. So until this is perfectly working, I am not thinking about replacing this. Obviously it is hard as a rock, and needs replacing, but there's way too much else that could prevent this from ever working again. I am not going to put that kind of money into it. But that said, we're already, what's 30% of the way there? Does that feel right? I don't know, maybe more. This is a good sign. God, this is a huge platen. It's like the biggest platen I've ever seen. So I think the issue is that when this whole carriage needs to slide, see how it's stopping because it's hitting this bar here. This bar appears to be the thing that raises and lowers the set of slugs. And to do that, it actuates the rod across there, and inside you see that there's like a bushing that rides along that, I assume, rides along that rail. That thing does not appear to be moving. So I have put PV Blaster in there, and I'm going to try and just work it slowly. But the rest of the mechanism, which was moving very, very slowly before, is starting to go. You can see how that whole system actuates. So we just need to work all that PV Blaster in there. We have surface corrosion out the wazoo, but honestly I think the mechanism's fine. We just got to get rid of the binding that's happening because of that surface corrosion. But I have discovered that this one here is the back spacer, and that works. However, given that these two buttons actuate together, this one on its own, and then this one when you hit, this must be the space bar, right? This is move forward. And that's not functioning, no matter where else the rest of this thing is in its cycle. So my assumption is that Just got to keep working to see if I can find whatever is bound and unbind it. Alright, the only damage I've found so far from shipping were the bale roller holders. And I've already taken this one off and straightened it. Let me see if I can do this one. Getting better. It's pretty close, actually. A little overall twist to the whole thing. Let's see if I can untwist it. Still definitely twisted at the end. You're not fooling anyone into believing that that's straight. You might fool them into not looking at it at all. And that would be a win in this case. It's one of those things you can fight forever. Eventually you have to pick a place to say enough is enough. I don't think anyone would see that and say that's wrong. Now, should I do anything about this? Let me do a quick wet sand with 1000 grit and see how it does. Well, I certainly got a lot of ground something off. It feels smoother. It may not. Like now it doesn't look rusty. It just kind of looks rust stained. Let's try it one more time. That's about done it. Still a little discoloration in places, but I think we've reached the no one's going to notice phase, which to me is more than good enough for this piece. Scrub on the bale rollers while they're out. Just one of those things, you never know when they're going to have these out again. Ooh, that's a good night's work. Still don't know why this main carriage, or what do you call this, index carriage, doesn't slide. And it has to, or I only get this center column. And the space bar still doesn't space. Hey. Is the drawband just too weak? There's a tantalizing idea. What if the drawband's just too weak? Oh, what a glorious fix that would be. that's the case, that's a simple fix. Tighten up the spring. I even know where it is, I just don't know if I can reach it from where I'm at. Well, this index carriage is still not moving. It's moving side to side. The bearings feel clean. And the best thing I can imagine is that there's a rod that does some of the control for the lifter. And I'm reasonably sure that there's a bearing that rides on top of it that needs to go side to side, and that is frozen. That's the one piece. It looks like it should be there, and it looks like it would have to slide, and it doesn't appear to be sliding. If that's the case, then I can imagine that not working correctly. The only way I can imagine to fix it is to start taking this thing apart. Now, there's some pretty visible places that it looks like might open. Namely, these two screws here and two screws underneath, which I believe would take this whole index off. Might have to be 4 screws. Maybe it's 4 screws to take this index off. At that point, we would have access to the escapement and the other regular mechanisms. And so I think that's where we should start. But I think we're going to have to take this hammer arm and assembly off first. So let's see if that's possible. I'm kind of hoping that there's some kind of a linkage in here and this part will just come off. Otherwise, we'll have to go underneath and unhouse that first. Put a drip of stuff in there. Now that one came pretty easily. That's good. Let's give this other one a little... Oh, all it needed was just the littlest bit of fluid to get it. But as I worried, whatever assembly is under here needs to come off first. Okay, well, what is the least number of things I can take apart to get at that? It looks like maybe there's just a set screw. It's not even really a screw, it's a... Probably should have done that first, obviously. Let's assume it's metric. It's bigger than that, smaller than that. So it's this one, it is an 8mm. And once that was loosed, that arm just came straight off. That's handy. Gonna tighten that back up. This knob was basically flush with the inner part of it. Hopefully that will be obvious when I go to put this back on. I'm gonna put these back up here. Whenever possible, always leave your hardware where they came from. That way you won't lose them later. Alright, now the important part. Rather than show you in excruciating detail how annoying it was to get these screws out and have their washers dropping everywhere, I'm going to explain to you in voiceover what's about to happen, because I was in too much of a panic as it was happening to explain. Of course, the problem here is that we can't slide the carriage sideways. And as you see right here, even though it's detached, it still won't slide sideways. And I suspect that this carriage is designed to be removed by sliding it sideways once this hardware has been removed. Well, the problem is it still won't slide. So, try to lift it up. And when you try to lift it up, you see there isn't enough room to get that front slide over that front face. The solution to the problem turns out to be sliding the bottom part of that front rail to the side to get it out of the way. But I only come to that realization because of what's about to happen right now. Oh, the bearings are coming out. Oh, the bearings are coming out. Oh, the bearings are coming out. Oh, no. I was really hoping the bearing assembly was going to be attached. Well, I'll explain a few things though. Oh boy, this just became a bigger project than I'd wanted it to be. And it's still not loose. Alright, what happens when I take this whole thing out? Does that at least... Yeah, it does let me lift it out. There's that bearing assembly. Oh boy. Feels like the second bearing assembly is staying together, at least a little bit. I'm a little bit surprised that this assembly came apart. Is there supposed to be a catch on the front or something? But now that this is out, I can show you what I think is going on here. So when we go to lift one up, this whole assembly lifts, and this is the mechanism that does it. This little wheel thing here goes into this mechanism, and I can't see how that would possibly function if this doesn't slide side to side. And at least as I'm feeling it right now, it certainly doesn't want to. I'm trying to decide how much of this machine I want to take apart. Feels like the entire point would be that it would slide along on this rail as the machine would actuate across. I can't quite decide how. I would imagine it would work any other way than that. So oh, there it's starting to go. Yeah, there it is. All right, we have a lot of cleaning to do on this rail. Ah ha ha ha! Finally, now that it moved, it's starting to. I've been lubing this bearing every couple of hours for 2 days. Ha ha ha! Once it moved, it was ready. There was no way to work the bearing from where I was to get the penetrating oil in. And you saw even when I started, I was trying to torque it with a big old pliers, and it still didn't want to go. And then as soon as I got any motion at all by tapping it sideways, that penetrating oil got in it, and it started going. All right. This also gives me access to the escapement and the back side of this indexing carriage, so I have lots of things I can clean now. I also have to be very careful when I try to reassemble, because this front bearing came apart in a way that I hadn't really wanted it to. So we'll have to be sure that that's going to work. I'm hoping that we'll have enough play in it that we can actually sort of not have to perfectly position it before reassembly, but oh, good. We're going to have a machine here. If you look here, you can see where it etched itself into the metal. I could not see this reddish color at all. So I'm going to sand that a little bit so that hopefully whatever history it has doesn't get remembered as soon as I throw this back in there. And then the rest of it's just scrubbing. Just a quick note, on the right side there is a little shim. And you can see clearly the imprint the shim has left over the years. On the left side, I see no such shim. So my assumption is this was a way to correct for manufacturing differences between the two sides. They must have leveled it and then thrown in a shim of a certain size. I hope that's what this is. Otherwise, I don't have another shim. Doesn't appear, at least. I'll obviously keep my eyes open, but it doesn't look to me like there's another shim. Meanwhile, what should be the space bar still is not spacing. So though I think we've gotten this bearing, and I've now shined this rod up, not that it matters, but it was really gross. Now that I've done those things, this mechanism here still is not doing anything. Ooh, and that is still tight. So there's something still something in this escapement bit here that's not letting it easily slide. So now that this is open, we will clearly be working on that as well. I still don't know what's going wrong in here, but I've decided when in doubt, oil everything you can reach. And that's what I'm doing. Way into there, way back into there, down in some of those crevices there. It's the shotgun strategy, but it may work. We'll find out. Otherwise, the next course of action is to take the carriage off and get some better angle into the top of the escapement there. I'll do it if I have to, but I'd rather not. So I'm pretty sure what the problem is that this spring is gummed up inside. I think that because you can hit the space bar and nothing happens. You can pull the carriage and it moves over. If you push with your finger to tension this, it works just fine. And so you say to yourself, well, just tighten the spring. So you tighten the spring a little bit, and you try it again. It still doesn't work. Every now and again you'll see one where it actually does move, just kind of slowly. You can also reach back and feel the drawstring. It's plenty tight. It's just not being able to take up any additional power. So I think the plan is we're going to ease the escapement off. Just make sure it wasn't over tight. No. And I can tell now that I'm having to pull harder to draw it across. So we are getting closer to having no pressure on this. How does the drawstring feel? It's still fairly tight, actually. So I just heard something inside spin. That's interesting because if the spring had completely given free, it should be slack now, but it's not. So instead what I think had happened was something in there was that gummed up that it was stuck even under all that pressure. And finally it gave out to catch up with where the rest of the drum carriage was. I bet it's going to be pretty grody in there. But if I'd known it was going to take this long, I probably would have gotten a second screwdriver so I could just bounce it back and forth. But that spring was very tight. I didn't count the number of turns here, but it was... I could probably count it in the video. Certainly more than 3 or 4, which is, I think, what people usually suggest. I just heard it spin out again. And again, it's still got tension, so it's not like the spring is broken. It's just hanging up on whatever gum or whatever is holding it. I mean, we're almost free, but my goodness, this thing was tight. I'm glad I didn't pull it any more than I did. That tension was never going to fix it. Alright, and we're free. There's a little hook here. This is our drawstring hook. It's just a little metal loop. It goes up and over one pulley and down into the side of the drum that is closer to this end. So that's a free carriage now. I'm hoping it's just these 2 screws. Okay, what did that get me? Nothing. Interesting. Oh, 2 more screws down here. Alright, we're going to put these aside. These are the top 2 in case they're different. This would not generally be recommended, but let's see. There we go. Just needed just a touch more torque. That's a bit of a scary proposition, but I had such a good fit on the screw, I didn't think I was going to strip it off. It's just going to give it a little more even applied tension. This front plate has that release, and the back plate holds the actual machine here. I'm hoping it just slides open, and it is dirty, as you might expect. Alright, we will get this cleaned up, and maybe, just maybe then, we will have a working escapement. Yeah, that is gummy. You can see this one here. Look at all that gunk. All that gunk is on there. I'm not exactly sure how to clean this, given that I think I really need to clean in between those. I suppose I could try spinning it up. Oh, that might work, but it's scary. Okay, well, I've done what I can. I scrubbed this one out pretty good. It was plenty gross. This one was harder because I don't want to lose the spring, obviously. I did what I could to scrub in there with the toothbrush, and when I couldn't even get in there, I scrubbed with some cotton swabs. It wasn't perfect, and you can see I've still got a little bit of oil in there, or not oil, mineral spirits in there. That should evaporate, but it was hard because this mainspring is so wound up here. It was hard to really get in there and scrub. But seeing it was important, I did scrub it as much as I could. And then I would hold my fingers on it, torque it up as much as I could, and scrub it as well as I could. And then slowly let it back off like that. I think I've gotten most of the gunk. I'm hoping there's actually enough mineral spirits left in here that as I torque the thing up, it will kind of get through the last few loops here on the outer edge. But in the end, I'm hoping overall we've gotten enough that it won't matter. Obviously, the next thing to do would be, if this still didn't work, would be take the spring out. It's a big job. So let's reassemble. I've decided I'm not going to change this string. It feels strong. I don't see any fraying. If it does need doing, it's really not that hard to take the mainspring out here. I think I can do it without removing the carriage now that I know that these two screws on the bottom are what do it. So it so happens that it was laying in a good spot, so I just grabbed it. I can hook this on here. Now if I pull it this way, now we're on there. Looks like we're clean that far, so let's spin back around. Gotta make sure we're entirely on the drum. Now, seeing how big that spring is, it would actually take quite a few turns to really power it up. Maybe that's understandable given the weight of this carriage. Still. I have to say, folks, I'm a little disappointed. It's not... Now it feels like they're pretty tight. And the problem is still the same. Drat. apart from tensioning this up just a little bit more. Yikes! Oh goodness, that feels really tight. Feels too tight. Well, folks, I think we cleaned the mainspring, but the mainspring wasn't the problem. Ah, drat. It's amazing the extent to which it feels like it's the mainspring. And yet now that I've had it open, I'm pretty sure it's not the mainspring. Well, I'm going to ease the tension off a little bit because it did feel like it was really tight. That's the bell assembly. I mean, it's dirty in there. This may end up with me taking the carriage off after all. I don't really want to. Everything in there is a crapshoot of if the bearings are going to come out. That's a little bit of cleanup. How about I haven't paid any attention to is this guide rail back here. Oh, that's pretty rusty. I don't know if I can fix that without taking apart the carriage. Again, I still don't want to do that, but I wonder if I could clean up this guide rail. It's pretty rusty. I can imagine that slowing down the motion of the carriage just enough not to get all the power of the mainspring. I mean, I still think the mainspring would have been the better candidate for being the problem, but now that I know it is not, well, I guess we always knew this was coming. Time to take the carriage off. I have a new guess about what's wrong, and it's basically that turning pulley for the draw strap is so gummed up that it's not turning well, which means it's not transmitting its force real well. And I think that because when I twang it under here, it feels very different than when I twang it over here. So I'm going to try. Oh, I'm just realizing that I need to unclasp that drawband. Here, I'm just gonna release it slowly. There's the carriage. Carriage is off. I have already removed two of the rails back here, the margins rail and the support rail. I want to see if it's possible to remove this escapement rail, put that in some evaporust because it's pretty rusty as well. The actual main bearing rail isn't too bad. We'll have to investigate that. Let's see what we're left with here. Boy, it's almost not that heavy anymore. Well, this wheel runs pretty freely. I guess we're just gonna scrub it. And I think that confirms for me what this switch does. This lets it go through 2 clicks. And then this one. So it's basically the number of spaces between characters, which I could imagine you might want to have when you're using symbols as words, because you might want to have a comment between 2 words. Right, let me keep doing a little bit of cleaning here, just as long as I'm in here. May as well clean some stuff up, even if it's not necessarily problematic. Cleaner is always better, right? All right. For reference, the big problem getting that carriage off was the right side, as viewed from the front. The right side screw was so close here that I couldn't get a screwdriver in it. And then I found this guy that I had laying around, probably from some IKEA project, and just barely fits in there enough that you could do it. This bearing here doesn't move very freely. But I also don't know how you access it. I suspect this has to just be screw off. Because I don't know how else you would have assembled that. You would think there would be a screw slot there, and there isn't. So instead, we're just gonna leave it. We're gonna give it a good couple of scrubs here, and then when I'm done, scrubs with mineral spirits, and when I'm done, I will come back and give that a drop of oil. I also suspect if this thing is meant to carry the weight of that carriage, it looks like it's adjustable a little bit with this screw, and I would have said that it looked like the whole weight of the carriage was on this middle one, and it wasn't riding on these lower ones at all, or side ones at all. And you could imagine that happening if this was up too high. So let me eventually play with lowering that down. Can we get this last rail out of here? Get the other 2 on this side. So I've got this rail out, got the screws back in it. And then into the evaporust. go. Wash my hands. One of those things that says it's non-toxic, but you know. Well, out of the evaporust, and it did a decent job this time. I wonder if it's starting to get a little bit past its prime. Might be time for a new jar, but it certainly got a lot off. And I think the rest of it will just shine up a little bit. A lot of this is just staining. It was very textured before, and now it's much flatter, but we'll still shine them up, reattach them, and start putting the thing back together. Doing gloves this time because, man, I was so dirty the last time I sanded evaporusted things. What are the gloves for, right? Gotta use them. I'm gonna start with wet sand. Let's start with wet sand. This is automotive wet sand, 1000 grit. The nice thing about doing this is, if it works, it shouldn't leave the big scratches. Now, if it's really pitted or something, then it won't get it. But when it does, I think it's the better choice. Look how much cleaner that is already. Now that will leave the grooved sides. Now on this one it won't matter as much because these are just detents to hang the margin hangers on. So we can just, my plan is to just hit these with the brass bristles. I feel like brushing my teeth. Alright, now we just keep doing that over and over again. Looks pretty good. Alright, I'll come back when I'm done. Well, they cleaned up pretty well. There's still some pitting and tarnish and whatever, but for the most part, I think that should be relatively free of gunk. I do worry a little bit about what's in between these teeth, but I think the evaporust will have taken care of most of that. And then I did do a little scrub with the brass brush. Anyway, the plan now is to start reattaching these things. The other two can go back on later because, well, that's how I took them off, actually. Oh. Knew I was going to do that. Forgot to put that carriage lock bit back in there. Should be able to drop it in fairly easily. Even as I was assembling this on, I was like, what is that second hole there? Yeah, it's this carriage lock. Oh, damn it. I think the scariest was avoided there. God, that sucked. I thought I saw some pieces go flying. It was just the screws for this. Oh. I'll add it to the list of things I probably should have done while it was open. Should have seen if this adjustment moved. Yeah, that'll be fine. Alright, so far so good. Okay, I don't know that I've really done anything earth-shattering here. The next important part will be to install the drawstring and see if we're actually any better than we were before all that cleaning. God, I hope so. Well, after reassembling, I'm basically back exactly where I was. When I'm here, the carriage advances, 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 until we get to about here, and it starts getting slow. At which point I need to start giving it some help. Now, the only thing I notice, right about the point where it gets slow, it goes from shiny metal here on the bearing rail to rusty. Now, I don't really think that it's the problem sliding on that piece, though it might be. In which case that would be that rod in the back needs to be lowered so that it can take more of the support. Anyway, the problem might be the balance there. I guess maybe I'll play with that, but if it doesn't, what I really need to do is open it up and clean the whole rail. Not because of this spot particularly, but because if that spot is where the rust is, then I imagine about here is where it's sat for many, many, many years. And so maybe there's some buildup and overall corrosion in where the bearing is sitting at this point, making it slow. Well, it was not all for naught. I'm glad I did all that cleaning, but the problem was this guy. I slid it up just a little bit, which took more of the weight on the roller that holds the carriage forward, so away from us, but forward toward the keyboard or toward the index. I was playing around with it, and as well as pulling on the wheel, the other thing that would fix it was pulling forward on the whole machine, which told me that maybe if I lifted the whole carrier rail there, it would improve. So I did that, I lifted it up, and then it started having problems on this end of the run. So I split the difference and put it halfway. And as you recall, remember when we get to that dirty point is about when it would start failing. I may still clean that up. But look at that, we're still moving. Getting a little funny here at the very end, but you know what? I'm not going to pull it all the way to the very, very end. If it works through the middle of the run, that's what I care about. So that's good. Glad to have that out of the way and without having to take apart that main bearing. Whew. All right. I noticed a couple other things I want to test. Let's see. Yeah. I was worried about that. When I dropped the thing, it looks like I hit the bar for the bell. That's sad. I hope I can tip that back. Ugh. Oh, that's frustrating. Maybe I can get it out without having to take the whole top off again. And then I noticed that this thing is bent here. I think it always has been while I've had it, but now that I'm looking from the top, you can see where the wear mark is here. It really should land here. And this piece is just bent. So got a couple things to unbend, but hopefully that's not too bad. Update, I was able to just open those screws up a little bit, get a wrench under, and bend it back. Now it sings very nicely again. And it really wasn't that hard. Once you push this down, there's plenty of access to bend this one back. So now that's back where that looks right. I'm thinking we might be getting ready to put the index carriage back on. What do you think? That would be pretty fun. Still got to figure out what to do about ink. I've been periodically soaking this in WD-40. Probably should be trying to embed some ink in it now. But now that I know how that slides off, I think, and now that the index moves, I think I should be able to get to it relatively easily. Okay, it's time to start reinstalling the index carriage. I put this lower bearing slide into some evaporust, and then just a quick wet polish on this pointer, and we will reassemble. Now the real question is, can I reassemble this thing and then put it back onto the machine? Last time when I took it apart, I had to sort of work it off sideways, but that was before, when I didn't have, let's see, was when I didn't have this slider working. Now I do. So maybe, if I'm lucky, and yet I don't think I'm that lucky. Okay. We have to bring the whole thing in from this side. But if I do that, how am I going to get that? I'm going to get that clip on there. Almost in. It's almost in. It's almost in. Come on. Come on, why aren't you going in? Oh, I dropped a bearing. Oh. Not entirely sure how I can get all the different parts of this working at the same time. The bearing is on. Oh, no, 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 no. Like 1/8 of an inch, not enough space here. But it's enough to be a problem. Oh, defeat from the jaws of victory. All that stuff's in the right place. The only thing that's wrong now is I dropped one bearing. Let's see, can I get it to slide up and over? Oh boy, that was sketchy. Alright, and then the last thing, remember there was this little metal spacer. This guy. And it sat right in there. But I don't want to have to do that too many times. If I had just a hair more clearance, it would have been fine. Be easy even. I think my plan this time is, since everything's loose and I don't want everything falling apart on me, I'm going to come in from the bottom one leg at a time. Oh, but I got it. All right, that's one in. No, that's the right screw. They're two different screws. I don't know how I didn't notice that. So it's definitely the big screws in the front and the little screws in the back. Now that I have one of each, putting the other two in is not that hard. Please don't let that be famous last words. What's going on here? Right, I think that's all the screws for the bearing. All right. All right. Big thanks to Lucas Duell of Typewriter Chicago. He's looking at the inking wheel with me, and he gave me some new ink. Basically, he tore apart a couple of these guys and threw them on here. My concern is only that the original one is, I mean, a decent amount bigger. 10% bigger. We'll have to see if that size difference matters. It might actually matter on this one. I don't think this is spring-loaded in the way that that like a Blickensderfer is. I think it might really matter as this piece comes up. The way the ink happens, this goes in here. Just the pure action of raising it causes it to swing past the ink, which means that that difference, that spacing must really matter. Anyway, we'll just have to see. Hopefully this works. If it doesn't, we'll have to go back to the original one here and just drip ink on it like we've been doing with the Blickensderfer. Okay, so let's throw this back on here. Let's see, the best way I figured to do that was, here's the problem. Weirdly, it has to be, it can't get past that index housing. So you have to kind of shove it in there. There we go. I'm gonna put the carriage lock. By the way, got the carriage lock working. I say I got it working, but really it was always working. When you line up this edge here, this pin will go up and in through this upper plate, so that carriage won't move. And I was thinking to myself, boy, wouldn't it be nice if it locked both both carriages? Why should it only lock the one carriage? Turns out if you line this one up, this little arm down here goes all the way in, locked. That one lock does both. Very cool design. All right, last thing to do is to reinstall the hammer arm armature. And to do that, we have to use the two screws that came with it. Now, I should polish this up. I'm too excited. We might get to that later. I'm realizing now I should have paid more attention to what angle that this piece was at. Is there any indexing on this end? None at all. Super. Let's start by assuming, since it pulls this way, that it wants to do this. And so we're going to install it sort of in this orientation and hope that that's right. Put there. You have to hold that when it's in its down position. I don't really have any hope that this is lined up correctly yet. We're going to give it a go anyway. I need some paper. The platen is as hard as a rock, so we're going to do at least a couple sheets here. You know what's funny is I haven't even attempted to feed paper into this yet. Oh, it doesn't grip at all. This platen is shot. Right. First test. Ooh! There's almost an H there. It's not inked. I do see the ink wheels moving. Is it possible that it's just not getting enough push? Can't quite tell if it's just not hitting it hard enough. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that ink roller isn't making enough contact with the character that's supposed to hit. And we'll see, but next let's try and use the original ink. Getting better at that. I'll definitely keep these inks. These will be good for a Blickensderfer, I'm sure. Keep those together. So we're going to feed this guy back on. Like I said, it's just a hair bigger. It might be all the difference. And now we're going to, as I've been doing with the Blickensderfer until now, drip a little black ink onto it. Crude, but potentially effective. We're just going to go drip. Let that drip sink in. Drip. Let that drip sink in. Drip. And just do that until it kind of looks, I don't know, I haven't come up with a good way to tell yet. Actually, I would venture to say it looks like it's absorbing it better than the Blicks do, which could make sense. It's probably a 40-year difference in age of the rollers. So while they feel pretty much the same, it's entirely possible that this is not nearly as abused as the Blicks was. Now the new question, can I put this on without making everything black? No. Can this really be how you do this? Should I do that without too much ink? Let's try this again. H! Ha! Oh, I'm in the double spacing. Come back. I'll need a little practice on this machine, that's for sure. One thing I will say I like, all the index machines I've ever used try to make assumptions about where you're going to need your characters to be. You know, trying to be smart about the English language or whatever. The Japanese don't know anything about that, so they've just put them in alphabetical order. And honestly, since I'm not going to memorize some new order, that's better, to my mind. Hey, look at that. Oh, it's going to need a new platen. It might even need some new feed rollers. It needs paint. It needs a scrubbing, but it's working. It's working. Look at this carriage moving side to side. This was the big problem before. That and the fact that it wasn't actually advancing. Guys, it's working! It's working! I don't like that this bottoms out back here. Suggests that it actually should be even a little bit further forward. I want it to end here. Let's try and fix that. I'm not having to hit it quite as hard either, so I think I've set it in the right spot now. Gotta hit it harder than that though. I'm so excited. Now let's do some Japanese characters, huh? I don't know any of these. I apologize if I made something horrifically incorrect here. Didn't fire at all. What's going on here? It can't possibly be that it's much better at printing English characters than printing Japanese characters, can it be? Is it just harder to ink them? Guess I could imagine that. Or maybe I've used up the ink. Let's try and do a, what's a letter I haven't used? Yeah, it's possible that it's wanting another drop of ink. Do I dare? Yeah. Oh, that's terrifying. No way. Nope, 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 nope. Nope. Oh, I have a guess as to what that red dot is. Where are my English characters? So if I put the English characters on the red dot and open this up, haha, sure enough. You put them on the red dot and it pulls the characters that are associated with, because obviously when you're pointing at a letter, the one that actuates is not this row. It's 9 rows that way. Well, that red dot must be 9 rows back from the release line. And that's how you get it out. Now explains what all this black mark is along the top of this. That's the ink. Honestly, this one's doing fine. I just need to maybe ink it some more. Again, you bring it to where it's between the feed rollers, pull it out. Getting better at that. Let's give it one more drip. It's taking longer to absorb. Probably means we're getting closer to saturation. So again, we are now dripping with ink. So I put it between the feed rollers, which lets it get over the carriage. Slide it onto that little housing. Find the little mark. There's absolutely... Oh, wait. Ha! No, I had the paper release on that whole time. Let's see. Once again, let's do a few. Why is my backspacer not working? Oh, can't have everything working at once, can you? That would just be too easy. I know I had that working once. Honestly, I'm willing to give up the backspacer if the other things are working. It's like it doesn't reach the end of its travel. I hope I didn't bend that too when I dropped it. Oh, that would make me so sad. You know what it might be? The double-spaced backspacer works better than the single-spaced backspacer. It just doesn't quite go far enough to engage the escapement. Something I wish I would have noticed when it was open, but honestly I can live with it. Because you can just go back to double-spaced and you'll get it back eventually. Alright. Whew. Interesting. Well, as I said, it needs plenty more work, cleaning and brushing up. Maybe repainting some stuff, maybe obviously taking a lot of rust off of here and there. The line feed mechanism is still kind of screwed up. It doesn't return by itself. You have to pull it both ways. It goes one more line than you ask it for. This thing looks bent, and yet I don't know that it would have worked if it was straight. I can imagine maybe that's the problem of one too many line spaces, but who knows? This is clearly not the right screw. Obviously, someone has had some trouble with this. Anyway, thank you for watching. Again, I hope I haven't typed anything horrible in the Japanese characters. I was just picking them at random. Maybe I should find a Japanese-speaking friend and have them help me coordinate something better to write next time. There will be lots more to show you about this typewriter, because although we've made the machine work, as you just heard, there is plenty more to do. We will continue to clean, fix, and learn about this fascinating piece of history. I have already consulted with a native Japanese speaker, and I'll share with you what we learned about how a typist would find the characters they needed to type. And finally, we'll see what's in the box. So until then, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Dynamically Typed. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again soon.